Here, so welcome and thank you, and yeah, it's all yours.
Oh, appreciate it. So welcome to our home. I spoke in front of the club a couple months ago now. I think it was in June, to talk about our program and what we do within these four walls and out in our just shy of 20 acres here. We purchased this property from the Fox family, so I would be real curious to hear more of the history of this space for sure. We purchased in October 2020. It took a full year of permitting and process with the county for us to gain commercial use of the space. And you guys were a big part of that. You can see these pipes coming through. You made sure that our kids are fireproof. But yeah, so we're knocking on a year operating out of this ranch. Our program is unique and special in the country. We are the only full-time professional mentoring program in the United States and maybe the world, but we don't claim to know what happens in other parts of the world. And what that means is that our mentors, my employees, are salaried full-time mentors. They're not volunteers. They're trained in trauma-informed practices. They come from backgrounds like psychology and social work and education. And we work with kids for 12 and a half years to make sure that the trauma that they have experienced as little kids, the barriers that they will run into in their lives because of generational poverty and abuse and crime, that those barriers don't dictate their futures. Our mentors are trained to not remove those barriers, but help them understand how they can persevere through them. So that's what we do day in and day out here. It was always part of the vision of our chapter to have a ranch, to have a property that was programmed for education and exploration. So you'll hear from Joe in a little bit about the next stage of our kind of work out here, our physical capital improvement work out here. That's really about connecting kids to the land that we own. It's a deep responsibility. I grew up in rural Oregon, so I appreciate that at a level that's very personal to me. That when you own property, you need to take care of it. You're a steward of water, you're a steward of land and for crops, and you need to be a good neighbor. So that's a big part of what we're hoping to teach our kids over the next year or two, with some stuff happening out in our fields. For the rest of that, I feel like I've already told you about our program. I'm happy to refresh memories, but mostly I just want you guys to see our space. Our kids roll down the driveway almost every day, and they still wander through here going, I can't believe we have a whole house. I can't believe this is all ours. And so they're attaching to this space in really special ways. So we're just glad to have them here. Do we want to take questions? We can get up and start moseying through and do questions on the road. But
does the school buses drop them off?
So transportation, thank you, is a big barrier for any family, any kiddo, to get services that they need. Our transportation is our friends. Our mentors transport the youth from school to here and back to home at night. No one is dependent on public transportation or a school bus to get out here to benefit from our services. A big part of what we aim to do is take those resources and our program to them and where they are. That said, we do have really great relationships with every school district in Central Oregon. We, aside from like contractual language, half of our time, so our friends spend 4 hours a week, every week with the kids on their roster, and 2 of those hours are in the classroom. So even during COVID, we were entering classrooms to help kids be successful in school or in peer-to-peer relationship building. So we work with their teachers to say, where is this kiddo struggling the most? And that's when our friends show up, is to help them at that moment. Any other questions? Well, why don't we stand and we can, you can sort of look into this space first. So this space is very much the arts and crafts room today. Watch those steps. Watch those steps. Watch the step, guys. Thanks. Jump. Good. Okay. See, we can. This will become a ball morning table. Put mattresses down. So as you can tell, this is the arts and craft space in our house. We always start with kids when they're in kindergarten, between the ages of 4 and 6, and so a place where they can one, create, but two, really make a mess is what this room is geared to be. It is right next to, and you can peek through a space that we program for STEM work, so science, technology, engineering, and math. Activities, toys, you see Lego tables in there where they can construct stuff. This is the painting, coloring, slime room. Our goal, and you can see this picture here, our goal is actually to reprogram this whole space, to knock down this wall, and to be building a connection between the arts and STEM concepts in the room as a whole. So taking the A from arts into STEM, this becomes our STEAM lab. And the best way that I can explain that is for the kids who are in here coloring and painting, that they, through time, they learn that there are platforms to take that spark of theirs and turn it into something that's based in technology. So we're teaching them on software programs that could lend to graphic design careers or architecture careers, that creative nature that their interest is in today, that is building toward a career pathway for them. And then vice versa, that our kids who are really just interested in science and technology, and today that's like video games, right? That if they say, I want to be a gamer or I want to design video games, that we teach them to design a video game takes a lot more than technology and sitting in front of a screen. You actually need to understand art, how to make that experience look engaging, how to color in a coding concept, but how to design a video game so that people want to play it. And that's an art concept that isn't necessarily connected to the kid who is really super into tech. So that we can bridge those experiences and those sparks here in this space. The room will still be, I'm making up this word, partitionable. So as we knock down this wall, we will still have the ability to divide it if we need to have separate classes. But the furniture in here will be modular. We'll be able to push things to the walls to have a big play space in the middle. We can bring those back into the center if we're doing a classroom activity that utilizes our big smartboard screen on the wall. And then it does become the biggest space in the house. So this will also sort of flip and be our family room where we can do family movie nights or things of that nature. Good. Okay. Follow this lady right here. And I'll share a bit about our kitchen as well. So we'll come line up around there too. And again, watch that step. It's just a tricky one up. Here, I can put this. Oops.
Wrong side of the sign.
Oh, I'm sorry. Why don't you come here?
I thought they were all going to come crowding through.
So when we started talking about construction and use of this space, one of the biggest things that came back from our mentors was we need a big dining room table. That's the heart of every home. It's where you break bread. It's where you break bread with your family, where you do your homework at night, where you converse with people coming in and out. It is the center of every home. And if we aim to keep this feeling like a home for our kids, we got to have the heart. And so the kitchen and really the reimagining of this space became that heart for us. You'll see this entire wall is going to go away. It's going to open up into our living room, mainly because we didn't have enough space to fit a decent size dining room table in that room. And then the idea that it will also still be a place for learning, this gigantic island, which is still overwhelming for me to look at and visualize in here, will serve as that dining room table for our youth.
How many will seat?
We're aiming for 16 total, unless you're using the stove, and then that is going to limit that side, but 4 on each side of that island. So if we cover the stove, then we could fit another 4 really along this stretch, 16 total. The reorientation of the stove allows whoever is cooking to see the whole space. We have kids, bouncing off every wall at any given time. And for the friend who is cooking at our stove today, they're looking out, which is a great view, but they're not watching what our kids are doing. So that's a good reorientation. And then we'll have in this space, in this window area, some lowered counters for our littles. So our kindergartners and our first graders can still have a space that fits them and they aren't teetering on the bigger stools.
Are you guys going to use that same range or get a different one?
We'll need a different one for sure.
Are you guys looking at induction?
You
should be with children because it stops them from being burned.
Yep, exactly. And we don't have gas here, so for sure it's going to be electric. Yeah.
Yeah, because the old school style, there's still an element in there that's hot with induction. As soon as you take it off, it's not.
Awesome. That's the hope for sure. For sure. What's the other piece? Oh, the reason that this is a big priority for us too is actually connected to our fields. So that arc of experience for our kids, we want them to learn what grows in Central Oregon, what can be planted and what is going to have a hope of growing here, right? We're not going to have avocados, we're not going to have bananas, but we'll do really well with some other crops if we take care of it. And then the experience for our kids as they grow and learn and want to take that knowledge into different areas. My goal is that we're going to have a Friends of the Children hot sauce. They're going to grow the ingredients in our field. They're going to know how to come in here and create it, taste and cook and plan, and that we will have business partnerships and entrepreneurs who say this is how you take a product to market, this is how you bottle it and get it to the farmer's market. And so they're creating something. They have a product that's out there for the world to see. They have a talent that can take them to COCC and their culinary program or off to business school or just rocking it as an entrepreneur. They know that they can do it and what the steps are that are involved. So that's the hope for this kitchen, is that they're learning how to turn those skills into something meaningful for the future.
What age group are you working with right now?
Right now, our kids range from kindergarten to 5th grade. Actually, we have one 6th grader. I keep forgetting that there's one 6th grader. And that is really dictated by the fact that we always start in kindergarten. Every new child that we enroll in our program is between the ages of 4 and 6. And then we walk through life with them until high school graduation. So our program opened its doors 5 years ago. That's why our oldest kids today, that original cohort, is starting 5th grade today. But we'll be prepared to go through high school graduation with all of them.
And the primary funding mechanism works through what?
Primarily privately funded. So foundations and individuals make up most of our budget. We did step into some bigger buckets of public funding during the pandemic. So we were a partner with the Oregon Health Authority to get support and resources for families who were under quarantine due to COVID. So we were delivering groceries. We were making sure they could pay their rent. We were the bridge in those gaps that they were experiencing. And in that course of time, we also received a grant from the State Department of Education. So we have a small amount from them too. But our annual budget is about 1.5, 1.6 million, and no more than 10% of that is coming from public sources.
So how do you find that? That's amazing.
It is foundations in the state of Oregon. It's people and community members that really see the value in what we're doing and come to the table with those resources. We're incredibly lucky to have a community of support. And the biggest news, I guess, we can share. I sometimes I forget that we should be talking about this in bigger ways. In late August, we received a gift of $1.4 million from Mackenzie Scott, who is the ex-wife of Jeff Bezos, who runs Amazon, and she's been giving away her fortune over the last several years. Friends of the Children nationally, so we're one of 26 chapters across the country, and collectively chapters of our program received $44 million from her. So that represents basically 1 year's operating budget. Our board on Saturday began the process of planning the next 5 years of our program and our growth, and where we will finish this calendar year with 64 kids. Our hope is to double that number in 5 years, and to be investing those dollars where they will make the most sense, that will include expansion to Redmond kids as well, and throughout the region. Today we have kids from Lapine to Madras and out to Prineville. So we will continue to be a regional program in that sense. Not just because we choose to expand into communities, but because we know our kids are going to be moving into those communities. As cost of living gets higher in Bend, they will be part of the population that is pushed out. And we make a commitment of no matter what and no matter where, we're going to have a mentor for you. So that means my team is driving to Lapine. They're driving to Prineville when their kids move there. Yeah.
What's your timeline on doing these improvements that you're talking about?
Our hope, so we went through a big process thanks to Jo. She wears dual hats for us, and I didn't tell her she was going to be wearing dual hats when I scooped her into employment. So it was a little bait and switch that I'll continue to own and be grateful for. Jo was hired to be our director of ranch operations, and she guided a process these from January really through the end of June to develop a master plan for this property. Not just what projects we want to see happen here, but along what phases. So how can we lump them together so they're not overwhelming with any one fiscal year for us to accomplish, and that we prioritize them, one, based on kids' interests and sparks. And so food, not surprisingly, was their top interest. So the kitchen will be food and our connection to agriculture, right? We're on a ranch for a reason. Let's not forget that we're out here. So the connection between agriculture and kitchen, that farm to table experience for them is priority number one.
Are livestock in the picture?
They are, yeah. So I have learned a lot.
We joke because we both say
girl over here has learned a lot about water rights and farming. And so after agriculture and developing our fields was prioritized in phase one, reaching out and making connections with local farmers, getting real close with Swally water, and learning, we continue to be in danger of losing a few acres of water, so learning what it's going to take to get in compliance with them. And most recently, we've partnered with well-rooted farmers, so they have the U-Pick on Swally Road, and we will be contracting them on a series of projects. First is to get us in compliance, so we have all of our water rights for the full, just shy of 10 acres.
Like 9.6 or something. Acres
and then they will be, so using our current makeshift irrigation system to get us into compliance, and then developing a unique system for our field, so one that is more efficient, potentially uses less water. And the proposal right now is to develop the large field, so that would be livestock, so grazing fields, and then this front patch here would be produce, and trying to decide what we are in a freeze spot, so an early spring spot, so there are certain produce that wouldn't work. We have chickens in the back, and they are so excited and delighted to partner with us and integrate that into our programming and work with our youth. So, and obviously that involvement of our youth will change over time as they get older and can take on more responsibilities.
So grazing and exposure to that becomes a partnership with 4-H, right? That we're connecting our kids who have an interest in that work and in that education, that this can be the space that they engage in that. It is not likely that we would have an on-site property caretaker here. We aren't going to have someone living in the barn and taking care of our property. So the overnight responsibility and the weekend long responsibility for animals, we still have question marks. We need to learn more about that. But all of it is connected to what we're trying to do with kids. All of it is. Yeah.
Did you have a question?
No, what about a greenhouse?
Yeah, We have definitely
talked
thought
about
about a greenhouse.
Yeah.
It's not out of the picture at this point.
Yeah. I think it becomes the conversation for what do we want growing in these fields and what gets started in a greenhouse, right? So it's building that connection. Right now we're trying to green the field for the purpose of retaining our water, and then in years to come, as that soil gets remediated really with those cover crops, then we'll know what we can plant, and a greenhouse will come into play in those plantings for future seasons.